Sonic is kind of like a comic book. Depending on who's in charge, the events or the order of events happen completely differently based on who's running this. And currently, with an emphasis on making sure that the storytelling is consistent, well, we have people out here trying to say that Sonic 4 doesn't belong in the current spot it is on the timeline. This YouTuber right here is the one saying this, and I wanted to react to that video because I very prominently think that the timeline is almost perfect for how they describe the events and where they describe the cutoff point for those events. With that being said, let's go ahead and start this video because it's very good to watch to understand where people are coming from when they say this.
Sonic 4 is one of those strange oddities in the Sonic series that we acknowledge exists, and then we move on. Most fans agreed this game was definitely not canon after Sonic Mania came out, essentially replacing it, myself included, and have been called out in the comments of previous videos telling me it is.
He never went on to explain why he thought that Sonic Mania would replace Sonic 4, and even though he just didn't do that, I might give out an explanation that makes sense. It's just because it's a classic Sonic game with classic Sonic that follows the original formula and doesn't deviate in ways that are fucking cool and shit. That's probably the reason why. I'm just trying to figure it out because he never explains in the video.
And then recently the Japanese Sonic channel dropped an official timeline and oh, no. So for those unfamiliar, Sonic 4 Episode 1 started development as Sonic the Portable for mobile phones, but at some point Sega decided to rebrand this as Sonic 4 and had it released on consoles in 2010 as the next official 2D side-scrolling entry following Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which is kind of silly because in the years since Sonic 3 and Knuckles we've had Sonic Advance, Sonic Advance 2, Sonic Advance 3, Sonic Rush Adventure, but what do I know?
There is a huge difference between a numbered sequel and a fucking sequel that's a spiritual successor. I don't know why people have such an issue understanding this. It's like the equivalent of saying, hey, Sonic Rush is like the classic games and it's an iteration on the formula even though the gameplay style is different. You know, it's not a iteration, it's a different gameplay style, right? Adding the homing attack but leaving in the spin dash is more of a iteration on the classic gameplay, and even though it sucks and it's bad all the way around, it is still more of a iteration than a full-on stylistic change like the boost system is. You know, I don't understand why he said that, and if I'm just missing the point, somebody can point it out for me, but I just don't get it, man. I don't get it.
Owning both Episode 1 and 2 unlocks Episode Metal. Now you're caught up? So why exactly do I think it shouldn't be canon, especially since it's on the new official timeline? And to that I say, clearly you don't know me. I spend way too much time researching Sonic lore. Not obsessed at all. First off, everything in the timeline is there for significance to the world building and overarching story, and yet, here's both episodes of Sonic 4. The story outlined is specified from Episode Metal and Episode 2, so nothing really from Episode 1. The significant events that take place is Eggman resurrects Metal Sonic and turns the returning Little Planet into the Death Egg Mark II, but Sonic stops and destroys the Death Egg. Okay, makes sense. Seems fair, except... No, it doesn't. That's just flat out wrong. It's almost as if someone in the lore team was going off memory after not playing the game in years. Hey, what happens in Sonic 4? Eggman brings back Metal Sonic. Oh yeah, Metal Sonic was beaten in Sonic CD, so he's restored here. So I guess that's canon then. So for context again, in 2012, Christian Whitehead's Retro Engine remaster for Sonic CD had also released, and Sonic 4 tries to tie into it. So Episode Metal starting with Metal Sonic on Stardust Speedway, reusing assets from Sonic Generations I may add, and Eggman on a floating signpost points at him and brings him back to life. Then Metal Sonic flies from Little Planet to Earth, so what's wrong with this? Oh, a lot of things actually! Metal Sonic wasn't just defeated, he got smashed to bits! You see a chunk of his head fly off. Also, you don't just fly from Little Planet to Earth, because Little Planet isn't out in space. Little Planet is mysterious and mystical and appears in Sonic's world for 1 month of every year above Nether Lake. They were very specific about that. I don't know if it shifts between dimensions. I know I'm getting a bunch of comments saying it probably teleports from space. Sure, keep telling yourself that.
Okay, let's be very clear about this. Little Planet is kind of like one of those things that you can kind of just do anything with, and it kind of makes sense, okay? So we see the planet flies up a little bit before it disappears. That is clearly a thing. All you have to do to even have a remote bit of like more sense or even make sense of it is just say, hey, little planet doesn't teleport to the exact same place every time, right? It doesn't appear like right above, never like every time. It could just appear in space and then come downward, which does sound a bit insane, but it's like a magical artifact planet. Like literally nothing about that planet is cool besides the things that happen on its surface and how Eggman and Sonic affected. So you can literally just say anything about it. I choose to just believe, hey, little planet can appear pretty much anywhere, but it'll always end up at Never Lake.
And furthermore, this isn't even Metal Sonic's return, because as I covered in a short, Metal Sonic's actual return is in Sonic Triple Trouble and Knuckles Chaotix. And if you're already typing in the comments trying to argue those games aren't canon, first of all, why are you watching a video on Sonic lore when you clearly don't care about Sonic lore? Secondly, Triple Trouble is the debut of Fang, and Chaotix was confirmed canon by TalesTube, the very same video that confirmed all the modern characters remember events from the classic games for those who are still trying to convince me it's a different timeline or dimension or whatever. Oh,
never take anything you see on TalesTube as fucking complete and utter canon. The games clearly come first. That's kind of where you go, and then you go based on what Sega tells you and based on how newer games try to reflect the older games. But you don't take the secondary material because most of the time, Sonic Team doesn't even give a fuck about any of these TV shows. They don't even care about them at all. They will literally say they're canon, and then nothing happens with the canonicity of those things. They don't even like appear or show up or get talked about. Not just because Sonic Prime gets erased, but like there's a lot of stuff that happens in these fucking shorts and stuff that just do not appear in the games. And even though we have some evidence that Tales 2 can happen based on the ending of Frontiers, there is no actual way to know if they're actually going to take what happens in Tales 2 and make those like kinda mandatory to like understand the next Sonic game. So I wouldn't even touch that shit with a 10-foot pole, okay? But also, you have to understand this. Metal Sonic, there's a difference between Metal Sonic and Metal Sonic, okay? Metal Sonic that died on Little Planet could have just been taken off of Little Planet and gotten repaired. But they used Sonic 4 to show you that the original Metal Sonic is never taken off of Little Planet, and the original Metal Sonic is revived in Sonic 4. So that's like kind of a part of the situation that you got wrong. But that's fine, let's keep going.
When Metal Sonic appears again in Sonic Mania, where he's also defeated in Stardust Speedway. Oh no, I just pointed out a loophole for my argument. Also, this is modern Metal Sonic, the model that debuted in Sonic Rivals after the previous one with a different design was shut down in Sonic Heroes. Okay, minor correction. The previous Metal Sonic model's last appearance wasn't Sonic Heroes, it was actually Sonic Rivals, and he still had his copy ability. It's Sonic Rivals 2 that debuted the updated modern design. I haven't played the Rivals game, so I didn't know about this. And that's just an awesome detail that continues to support my point. And the Metal Sonic who was defeated in Stardust Speedway has his classic design.
The modern and classic designs of characters are just different art styles. The differences aren't canon. Sonic's always been 15 or 16. Oh, that's nothing. So?
That's how Sonic worked in the past.
Metal Sonic is amazing, but he's weird, okay? So clearly Eggman has the blueprints for Metal Sonic, but he finds it very, very practical to constantly go back during the classic era and go get the Metal Sonic who is left on Little Planet. And I find this to be very captivating because you can tell that ever since Sonic 4 Episode 2 came out and Episode Metal came out, they have been taking those events into account. One, Metal Sonic has not appeared in any classic game without both Little Planet and blueprints of Metal Sonic reappearing before he shows up. There has not been a thing since the events of Sonic Episode 2 that has shown Eggman not having Metal Sonic on Little Planet, and every single version of Metal Sonic that comes out gets destroyed and is never mentioned to have that ability again. Rocket Metal Sonic completely destroyed. Triple Trouble Metal Sonic completely destroyed. Eggman doesn't use it anymore after he gets the Metal Sonic back. The only thing you could say is that maybe the one from Metal's Chaotix is fucking like right there and he could have been using that, but also you have to remember that he's going back to go get that current Metal Sonic that was left on Little Planet. That means all he has to do is just take things from his other Metal Sonic designs and just use it to evolve the current Metal Sonic. So there are logical explanations, as I constantly say, but we can keep going because this is really good video. It's a very beautiful video.
Look, the timeline places Sonic 4 prior to Adventure purely because they used the modern Sonic design and nothing more. Episode 1 did this because this is Sonic's official design, and even though it was still in development, Generations wouldn't be announced for another year, bringing back the 90s design with it, marketed as Classic Sonic. And when Sonic 4 Episode 2 came out, they had to keep it about modern Sonic because Episode 1 did that. And I think we already fully established during the 2010s that Sonic Team didn't really give a damn about timeline and continuity. And I even made a short highlighting Metal Sonic's multiple design updates between games, and that it's actually pretty consistent how Eggman scraps or repurposes robots that are useless to him, and keeps what works and makes updates and changes to stuff that does work.
Yes, that is true, and based on what we understand about the events of Sonic 4 in relation to both Mania and Superstars, it makes sense that Eggman just constantly wants to use the Metal Sonic from Little Planet due to a specific purpose. The purpose, we don't know yet, but if we ever do learn that purpose, well then this video is gonna seem very cringe, but it's actually a pretty good video, so yeah.
Oh yeah, mate, Orbot having different paint job and voice chip in Unleashed? Nah, totally different art direction. It's not canon. Metal Sonic's design was updated between Sonic Heroes and his next appearance in Sonic Rivals. He's a machine. He can be changed and upgraded. Every other character has gotten new 3D models between games, but they all still have the exact same designs they did in Sonic Heroes. Well, except Rouge, which is just wearing different clothes. And circling back to this game's story outlined in the official timeline, it says the Death Egg Mark II is destroyed, except that's a full-on lie, because the game ends on a cliffhanger without any actual conclusion. Eggman builds his new Death Egg around Little Planet, because that's real original. He turned it into a big metal ball before. He also made a big metal ball with his face on it, so why not do both again at the same time? After the final boss, we see the area around Sonic and Tails blowing up as they take a pair of escape pods. When Little Planet had been freed from Eggman in both Sonic CD and Mania, we see it get freed and then disappear with some happy fireworks. But here, while we do see sun explosions as Sonic and Tails exit in their pods, but during the credits as they leave, the Death Egg Mark II is perfectly fine and intact. All that happens is when the credits end, the power goes out and the purple lights disappear, and the camera pans down back to Earth. Sonic Chronicles was a game that built on a hefty amount of lore established by past games, and it too ended on a cliffhanger, but with no definitive end or follow-up, because reasons. It can't tie back into events of the main canon. And in the case of Sonic 4, technically there's no to be continued or anything, but Little Planet isn't freed. It's still trapped in the Death Egg, and Sonic and Tails just left it there.
You see, let's be very clear about this. Let's be very insanely clear about this. Little Planet always needs space in order to disappear. There's never been a time where Little Planet appears where it just immediately appears over Never Lake, or it doesn't have space to move after being used, where it doesn't need to move in order to disappear. So, in order to completely leave the events of, well, Sonic 4 Episode 2, it doesn't need the entire base to be destroyed. 1, it needs to not be used. 2, it needs space to move. That has always been a big part of Little Planet. So if the explosion that Sonic and Tails ran away from was big enough for the Little Planet to escape it, well, eventually it'll just move in that direction. Hopefully it can move in that direction. It doesn't have to just constantly move upward to teleport, but like as long as there's space for it to move, it should be able to teleport whenever it goes, because obviously due to the time post mechanic, we know that the Little Planet is actually just going forward in time to whatever time it goes to. So, yeah.
That's not an ending! At the time, everyone was expecting presumably that this would be followed up by a Sonic 4 Episode 3 that followed the trend and pattern of the first two, would likely feature Knuckles and retread some elements from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. 2 years later in 2014, a teaser dropped for Sonic 4 Episode 3, which turned out to be an April's Fool gag pulled off by members of the fandom. God damn, that was really that long ago, yikes! Of course, most fans had come to the conclusion due to the poor reception of Sonic 4 Episode 1 and 2 that an obviously planned Episode 3 had been cancelled. Of course, there was no actual evidence of its existence, but we just really didn't think too much about it afterwards. Until now. So completely out of nowhere, a beta build of Sonic 4 Episode 2 leaked, and within its files was a never-before-seen post-credit scene, which picks up with the reveal of the Master Emerald glowing, revealing it's in some mechanical room with the silhouette of Knuckles standing in front of it. From there, we see the camera perspective we see at the end of the final game's credits, where the Death Egg starts to power up again, and now with a Master Emerald green glow. And then dozens of Eggman UFOs appear, ending in a white screen saying "to be continued." Just wow, I can't believe I'm actually seeing this. So what does this tell us? First of all, Sonic 4's story does indeed have no conclusion, much like Sonic Chronicles. Both
Wrong! It does have a conclusion, and the Sonic official timeline is telling you the conclusion of the story. They left it in canon, and therefore they have told you the conclusion of the story due to that being the conclusion. Also, they removed it from the game for a reason, because that's the conclusion of the story. The fucking facility shuts down, there's a hole in the ship, and the little planet is able to get out from there.
things outlined in its official timeline, Metal Sonic returning after CD and the Death Egg Mark II being destroyed, are both flat out incorrect and contradictions. Its only anchor to a timeline placement was its intention of being a sequel to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which it failed at, and being the first event in the modern era prior to Sonic Adventure simply because it was designed with the modern character designs, which also entirely undermines Sonic Adventure being the debut of them, as well as a time skip seeing the characters we know for the first time since the classic era now as teenagers, and possibly for the first time seeing each other since then. To be honest, we don't need literally everything to be part of the canon. Sonic 4 is fine just existing as its own thing, disconnected from the main story of the series.
This guy is very intelligent, but what are you talking about the first time in years? You do understand that Amy wasn't in Sonic 1 Episode 1 or 2, right? But she does appear in fucking Superstars. Is Superstars non-canon now? I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm just asking, cause I'm like, is he gonna make a video on how Superstars isn't canon? Because a game being bad doesn't make it not canon, okay? They should just erase Sonic 06. Just completely erase it. It never happened. You'll never see it again. Crisis City, Methless, they're all gone. The ideas are bad. The game sucked. Okay? Like, I don't know, man. He's not making very good points. He's just not. I like the argumentation, but the points aren't very good. Also, I like his voice. His voice is very good.
It's very odd to see something very jarring and out of place that really doesn't fit, when everything else here is so relevant and specific to the history and world building, like the creation of the Gaias, the ancients settling on Earth, the Echidna tribe's past, and there's story and character arcs and how events from one game leads to another, and the timeline only neglects canon games that don't really add to that. And yet, here's Sonic 4. What's its significance? Episode 1? Nothing. Episode 2? Metal Sonic was brought back after CD, even though he's already been brought back after CD. This feels like the one thing on the timeline that feels so out of place it has to be some sort of mistake or error. But
it's not an error, and most of the modern games that happen in the classic era make note of the fact that either 1, Metal Sonic isn't there, or 2, Eggman is actively trying to get back at Metal Sonic. Whether it be because Eggman hasn't made anything as advanced as Metal Sonic then, or he just literally just loves the design of Metal Sonic and thinks thinks that he can be reused over and over again. It's one of the two. But we also know that like they're neglecting games right now, and if they add them later, they'll just revise the timeline. So I don't know how much it matters that Metal Sonic's first revival is in Sonic 4, because if they add it and say, hey, they just made cheap copy Metal Sonics, well then that makes a lot of sense. But then you can go the other route and just say the Metal Sonic that's on Little Planet is just the most advanced piece of Eggman technology ever created, and Eggman wants that piece of technology.
Likely will not get an official explanation for this choice. If anything, they may change it randomly one day and sweep it under the rug. And changes might happen anyway in future, whenever they change their minds or decide something else works better, not unlike Legend of Zelda, who keep rearranging their official timeline every few years. Do I think things would be better if Sonic 4 Episode 3 came out? Probably not. I'd prefer not to have another story where Knuckles is an antagonist because Eggman tricked him again now. Like, how many times is that now? Even so, it seems Sonic 4 Episode 3 was canned before the second one was even finished, which is why the cutscene was likely removed, and the Cutting Room Floor sourced this blog post from 2015 where a former Sega brand manager talks about its cancellation and admits to there being a cutscene removed. This has been here on the internet since 2015, how about that? Also, apparently when Christian Whitehead was brought on to make his Sonic CD remaster official, he was approached about potentially working on Sonic 4 Episode 3 by Sega Studios Australia. Wait, we had a Sega studio here? Which was shut down in 2013? Wow, years later I'm still learning new things for Sonic freaking 4. What were we talking about again? Oh, right, Sonic Timeline. Anyway.
Yeah, like the way he presents his points are very solid. They're very, very good. But the issue is that the points aren't very good based on the evidence that we have from them. I would really like to talk to this guy though. I think that it would be very worthwhile to actually like genuinely talk about Little Planet, because I like White Space more than Little Planet, and I think White Space has more value as a time travel location than Little Planet, and that's something I would really like to talk about. But like, other than that, I don't see anything in Sonic 4 that's worth talking about other than how it affects the timeline. And how it affects the timeline is very, very solid, because pretty much anytime you see Metal Sonic get destroyed now, he kind of just is durable. Also, why the fuck would Eggman build a robot that gets ran into a wall, gets hit by a laser, and he just makes it to where both the laser or the wall can destroy Metal Sonic? Like, what is he doing? Is Eggman not that intelligent? Oh wait, never mind. I'm out. Peace. Peace. I'm sorry.
Happy, Doc, Grumpy, Bashful, and Tyrone. I never save a black beat, just number in my phone. It's the Mambo King, Xavier Cougat. Call me Mario, nigga, cause I'm wearing my coon hat. Some of my best friends are black. They say I'm fucking racist, 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 racist. Homie, I ain't the one who put your ass on a slave ship, slave ship, slave ship.